Fran, many people may have turned a blind eye to this crisis unfolding in Syria, but it's pretty hard to ignore it, in particular since we saw that image of the little 2-year-old boy, Aylan Kurdi. Do you think that image is enough to change views and prompt action, both short-term and long-term?
I really feel that if that image isn't enough to motivate people to stand in solidarity with Syrians who are fleeing the conflict in their country, that I don't know what will. But we know as World Vision what's really important is it's not enough just to share that photo. Taking action is critical. And the first thing that we need people to do is help talk about the need for peace in Syria. So we need to be lobbying politicians and putting pressure on domestic governments to use their influence, their leverage, to bring parties to the conflict to a political solution. That's incredibly important.
These incredible pictures of people on foot leaving Budapest, hoping to make it to the Austrian border. You've been in Syria. Just describe what they're fleeing.
What we can tell you that since the start of this crisis in 2011, death, destruction, suffering, mass atrocities. People really are running for their lives. And I can tell you the situation in Syria gets increasingly worse. 4 years ago, there were 1 million people in humanitarian need. Now it's 12 million. If this continues, we're going to see more and more people trying to flee the grave risks they're facing in Syria. And the first place these refugees go is not to Europe, it's to the surrounding countries. So as you say, Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, Turkey, these are the places that are shouldering the most burden at the moment in terms of numbers. There's 4 million in these countries, and we really need to try and work out how we can support these governments and the response that they've been doing as well.
In terms of, obviously, we're seeing a lot of those countries accepting a lot of refugees, but within the Gulf region, 6 countries, including Oman, where you are now, are not taking any Syrian refugees. Now, that's according to Amnesty International. It's been reiterated by Human Rights Watch. What's the feeling there as they see these pictures from Europe play out?
I think it's incredibly important to realize the strain that the region has been under in terms of shouldering the burden since the start of the crisis, through hosting refugees, through using their own infrastructure to support these refugees. And you can see they're really at breaking point. If we're not able to support them to do so, then the strain gets increasingly difficult. The quality of asylum in these countries goes down, and that's why you see numbers of refugees increasing coming into Europe.
So what needs to be done? You're obviously focusing a lot on the source of the problem. We heard Prime Minister David Cameron talking about a focus that has to be there in Syria and with the refugees that are in those neighbouring countries. What do you think needs to be done in the short term?
I think the short term, we must see an immediate end to violence by all parties to the conflict. That's number one. That's so important. The second thing that needs to happen is the scale of the crisis is such that the regional response plan is only 25% funded. So governments who have made commitments, that money hasn't yet materialized for the response. So we need to fund the response to look after refugees. We need to stand in solidarity and make sure that those critical protection areas, shelter, water, education, sanitation, health, in every single country that refugees flee to are provided to them. Everyone has a right to seek asylum. And all UN member states have a duty to provide that asylum to them.
And given the numbers that are in places like Jordan and Lebanon, how are those countries coping with the influx?
I've got to tell you, these countries are at breaking point, with over about 1 million in Lebanon, 623,000 in Jordan. These countries have done a phenomenal job and been incredibly generous in looking after refugees, providing them that asylum. But I can tell you, in every single country in the region that is hosting refugees, in terms of every single need, we're not able to meet it. That is the scale of the crisis. But as I say, this is the country where refugees go to first. So we really need to make sure that the quality of asylum is able to be maintained in these countries, and we need to support governments to do that.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there for now. Fran Charles from World Vision, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks very much.